Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installment of a different series every show. It is Monday, October 27th, National Black Cat Day, or American Beer Day, not to be confused with National Beer Day. Now, do you know what the difference is?
No.
The National Beer Day is April 7th. It actually falls on the same time that Prohibition was repealed in, I think, 1933 or so. And so that makes sense. I think American Beer Day is like Valentine's Day, where they made it just to sell beer as opposed to Valentine's Day
But this
cards.
is American Beer Day.
Yeah, they're both, I mean, if it's national or American, they're both American stuff. Yeah. And also this TV series, even though it's a British TV series, it's an American writer in Harlan Coben.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the connection there. Harlan Coben, when I first heard that he was doing a Lazarus TV show, I was like, we've done Lazarus, though. That was an anime. We've done the Lazarus Project. That was also a British sci-fi series. And then I feel like there have been movies called Lazarus. Paul Walker from the Fast and Furious franchise.
The Lazarus Project.
He was in a movie. Yeah. And it's all concerning sort of the devil. It can be sci-fi-ish type things. This one, I had no idea. I do know that I just finished sort of an Amazon Prime psychological thriller about solitary confinement in The Institute.
Yes.
Based on Stephen King's book. So I was wondering if it would be similar to that.
Well, it's interesting you say that because if you remember something about The Institute, David E. Kelley was supposed to pen that script. And I learned that David E. Kelley and Harlan Coben are going to be working on his most famous character, Myron Bolitar.
Who we've talked about before.
Because when we were doing the Amazon Prime series Shelter, that's supposed to be like his nephew. But they're going to be working on that. And I agree with what RogerEbert.com said about it. They said there seems to be a new Stephen King adaptation on the big screen every few months. On the small screen, author Harlan Coben reigns supreme.
I don't think so. I think Stephen King's been on the small screen quite a lot. We're doing it. Welcome to Derry next. I'm saying
that
The Stand.
When you think about it, because what do you know about Harlan Coben? Like if I said the Netflix deal,
Fool
do you
Me
remember what that was?
Yeah, of course. He had 7 books that he's going to be turning every single year. I'm curious what this year is going to be. For him.
Well, actually, he has one coming out on January 1st.
Yeah, it usually is always the first of the year.
It's usually the first one that we do. It's called Runaway, and the same creator who helped him with this series.
One thing I've noticed though, by reading his books and then watching the series, is I always am mad at the adaptation. They always definitely. I'm not even a huge fan of his stories necessarily, but usually I don't like the direction they take it. So I was happy to find out that this isn't based on a book, but he actually wrote it specifically for television, because that, I feel like, unlike most of the time, is actually a good thing.
Well, it makes sense because, again, Netflix has a hold on 26 of his books. They even re-upped his contract in 2022. But yes, him and Danny Brockhurst decided to create this series. Danny Brockhurst actually was the creator of Brassic. He created it with Joe Gilgun.
Our first show that we ever reviewed.
Yep. And that's why both of them, he's worked with Harlan Coben on everything.
That's weird. I would have expected this to be a little bit funnier then, because this is not a funny show. The comparisons I'd make to this, I have 5 of them.
Okay.
Archive 81, because it deals with the past and this guy who's kind of seeing ghosts.
Right.
Tru Calling, because that dealt with a girl, Aja Dushku, who would see ghosts and talk to the past, and also try to work out mysteries because of the past.
Oh, was that the Fox TV show or something?
I think so. It had Zach Galifianakis in it.
Yeah.
Back when, and then Prodigal Son, because in that you got a therapist, I think, whose dad was a serial killer, and I didn't watch too many episodes of that, but Martin Sheen was in there.
Michael Sheen,
yes, thank you. And so this deals with Bill Nighy, or how do you pronounce his name?
Yeah.
He dies, but he was a famous psychiatrist, and his son is also a pretty famous psychiatrist at this point. His career is still taking off, and he works at a psychiatric institute. And so he's the one that we follow, this Joel, or they just call him Laz, even though that's his last name. The Watchful Eye, it reminded me of that because that took place in a haunted building where she sees ghosts. Anything that sees ghosts, I compare this to.
So is this a horror TV series, or is this more just based on the supernatural kind of aspect?
Horror to a certain extent. The first scene we see is kind of the reverse Uncle Ben Spider-Man. And what do I mean by that?
Reverse Uncle Ben Spider-Man.
You remember how Spider-Man ignores the person who's about to kill his
in
uncle?
the first movie, yeah.
In the Sam Raimi version, yes. Yeah. In this, he's pounding on the door. There's this kid in 1998. It's Laz. We see later in the present, but he's pounding on the door, and the door opens, and this guy with a face mask runs past him, knocks him over, and reveals that his sister Sutton is dead on the ground.
Mhm.
And so that's what I mean. He doesn't stop the killer from being able to approach the victim. He doesn't stop the killer as he's leaving.
Okay,
So that's what I
so
mean by
yeah.
reverse Uncle Ben. So he sees his sister's dead. He runs up, gets himself all bloody as he's trying to like resuscitate her, but she's gone. Then he runs instead of calls because in 1998 there were no funds.
Uh-huh.
So he runs across the street. It's a big city that he lives in, to his dad's office, which is like on a high-rise level of some fancy building. And he runs in and he tells Bill Nighy's character, what's his name?
Dr. Lazarus.
Dr. Lazarus. And he's like, Sutton's dead. And he was actually twins with Sutton. Just throwing that out there.
Okay.
He also has a sister named Jenna, still alive. His dad doesn't take it well. They're both crying. And then we flash to the present.
That's such a strange, like, flash forward.
Right. It was certainly a directorial choice. So in the present, psychologist Joel here, again, Joel is Laz. He is at the psychiatric care facility and he's Googling a serial killer because that's what you do when you're there. And he's told today's client is here. And we assume that is his client, that he decided right before he was going to go interview this guy, he was just going to Google him up.
Yeah, okay.
Not for the audience at all, but just for him. Yes. So he walks in and he sits down across from the serial killer and he dodges his dad's call because his dad is calling him at that time. And he's just like, eh.
Okay, so his dad is still alive.
Yeah, of course. Why would his dad not be alive? Do you know something I don't? No, the serial killer instantly looks at him, even though this is the first time they meet, and he's like, God has told me he's going to punish you. And on my behalf, I asked God to punish you, and he's going to do such.
Why
I don't know why.
This
the
is like
serial killer had a vendetta against his psychiatrist.
So for the first 10 minutes of the TV series, we get a flashback that shows that there was a serial killer in the house. He runs away.
Well, we don't know if the guy's a serial killer, but we do know that that first person was just a murderer.
Right.
Yes.
Right. But then, like, you're saying that we cut to him knowing that this guy was a serial killer, and he's giving him vague threat.
Yeah, this is in the present, so it's not the same dude, I would assume. But yeah, the serial killer walks in, says, "Can you get me out of here?" And the Dr. Laz says no. And so he's like, well, then, yeah, I'm going to punish you. Or God is going to punish you on my behalf. As he's leaving, as the serial killer is leaving the room and Laz is getting up to go, he gets a call from his sister. And on the phone, the sister says, Dad's dead. And they make eye contact. Laz and the serial killer. And the serial killer does everything but wink, you know? Like, he's already started his process.
It's crazier to me that he got a call from his dad right before he walked in.
Yeah, because he thought that that's what it was about when he answered the phone. He's like, yeah, I'll get back to Dad later. And it was like, no, you won't. So his dad has been found dead. I think they think it was a suicide because he did leave a little note with a picture of a three-legged table, and it said something along the lines of like, it's not done or something like that. And so what does Laz do? He returns home. And this is where we get like so many 1998 cut back flashes every time he meets someone.
Oh, so we're not done.
It's
okay.
someone that Laz is cast as a younger version of Laz too.
Right.
We just constantly see him as a young person, seeing through his eyes the places he used to be. So every time he meets his childhood friend, like Seth, who's now a cop, we see him as a kid. Same thing for his sister, Jen. Yes. And then there was also his ex-wife, Bella. Bella, you know who she was played by?
Carla Crome.
Yeah, by Carla Crome. But that's Jess from Misfits. I have not seen her. I've seen the other Misfits girl around there, who Antonia, whatever her name is. But like, Jess from Misfits, this is a first. I confused her with the lady from Utopia. She had the same haircut as Sasha Lane from Utopia or The Crowded Room.
Yeah, well, Danny Brocklehurst, he actually directed episodes of Misfits, and he created Brassic with Joe Gilligan, so it makes sense why she's in the series. So there's the Joe
Gilligan, setup again. So that's cool. And so he still has a flame with her, even though she's married to this guy named Paul, and they have a kid named Aiden. And Aiden, comes along later in the episode, but Aiden is warning Laz. He's like, you should never have come back home. And it's like, dude, it's his dad's funeral. It's not like he said he was going to like set up shop here. But this is where it gets kind of interesting because he is home. He's talking to his sister Jenna, and he's talking to Seth about like what happened and how far their lives have like changed and stuff like that. Seth now works with the police, so he's able to like give him the inside scoop on anything he wants. He visits his dad's office. So the same place that he ran into to say, hey, Sutton's dead so
Right.
many years ago. He comes back there. It's the middle of the night, pours himself a drink, sits on the couch, and some lady busts in. And the lady's name is Cassandra.
When you say she busts in, does she,
She
like,
just
barge
walks
through
in
the
there
door? Oh.
like she had an appointment. And he's like, what's going on? He gets up and he's like, whoa, my father's dead. You obviously have an appointment with him and I can't help you. She ignores him. She just goes right into her problems of like she has a stalker. She has these thoughts about killing her boyfriend. And because he's a psychiatrist, he sits down and he starts talking to her about it. And she's obviously been there before because she walks over to this globe, which is also just hiding a bunch of alcohol. She pulls that up and she pours herself a beverage. And so she starts to talk to him about it. And then when he goes to top her off on her beverage, she disappears.
Okay,
And
I was wondering if she was a ghost. It seems like that's
well,
what
he's
they're
not sure
doing.
either because he was drinking that night. So he's like, what happened to this girl? The next day, he has to see his father's files to figure out who she is so that he can go and talk to her again because she was obviously concerned about this stalker. So he asks his dad's secretary, who says, your dad never digitified any of these. That's a word now. So they're all in paper copies. He goes through all the papers and he happens to find her file, Cassandra Rhodes. However, the file is from 1999 and the picture looks like she did the day before.
Uh-huh.
And so he goes to the address on file, even though it says case closed. And it'd be very strange that someone would still be living and looking like they did back then. But he does it anyways. He goes to this place, stops by and finds out from the person who's now living there, a very helpful person who says, yeah, she died. She was murdered in 1999. So there's no way you were talking to her yesterday. And that's the first time you kind of see him like shocked. Right?
Yeah, okay, so he can speak to ghosts. This, like, reminds me of, like, Sixth Sense.
I don't think he at that point realizes what exactly happened. He's just like traumatized a little bit because then he gets a phone call saying dad's funeral's like right now, we have to get to it. And so things get a little bit more, he's not able to focus in on the craziness.
But
of
you
what
can
happened.
tell that it's Harlan Coben because wasn't Missing You, or sorry, Fool Me Once, that's what it was. Fool Me Once, wasn't that, like, about how a wife saw her dead husband on, like, on a video camera? Like, it always seems like it's kind of following the same track.
Actually, like that was all his books so far have existed in reality that I've read. The ones that got into were the Myron or whatever you're
Myron
talking about.
Bolitar, yeah.
That's the ones where it might have been a little bit mysterious, like supernatural aspects of stuff. But the ones that fool me once, those murder mysteries were usually in the real world. So what happens is he attends his dad's funeral. He also has these questions for the guy who was originally assumed to have killed his sister Sutton.
Yeah.
So that guy shows up at the funeral, but no one sees him. And he also ends up following Laz at the end of the episode. Laz chases him, doesn't ever figure out who he is, but he chases him to the graveyard where his sister and his father are now buried, right? And that causes him to then go back to his dad's office because he's feeling so like confused about everything. And who should show up but his dad? And his dad, for anybody who really wasn't paying attention for the episode or to the episode, just gives you the full out synopsis. He's just like, so Cassandra stopped by. She's dead. And more will stop by like her, including me. I'm dead and I was murdered.
So it's just recapping basically
Yeah.
everything you saw. My question is, before we get to that, is that you said that the person who killed his sister shows up at the funeral. How do you know it's him? Because you said that he was wearing a mask at the beginning,
audience
right?
is shown as he's like stuck in the graveyard that this guy is like watching from a tree and his mask is off at that point. And
Oh,
you're just like,
okay.
oh, you're the kid from earlier who's now like a grown adult.
So was it fun to see at least Bill Nighy play this role as
He
Dr.
literally
Lazarus?
had, I think, 10 words in this entire
Okay, so
pilot.
he's not
So
in
it's
there a lot.
really about Joel or Laz and his beginnings. It was funny to see how much he still has this thing for Bella and that complicated plot because she's with this guy named Paul and he finds Paul to be too square for her. And I'm just like, are they really going to try to cram that love story in at the same time? Seth is starting to date Gemma again. trying to console her. And he also is the one who got Cassandra's file from the police. Once he realized that Cassandra was dead, he asked Seth specifically to go in and get her file, and he was nice enough to do so. Seth is like discount Foggy for
From Daredevil.
for Daredevil, yes. And that would make Joel sort of a Matt Murdock type character.
Before we get to your rating, there's 6 episodes that were all released. Are you planning on watching the rest of them?
I'm giving it a 6.5 out of 10. So
Oh, okay.
I liked the scene where Cassandra showed up and they're back and forth, because there's a lot of ways they could have played that, where she walks in there and it's melodramatic and she's off talking about stuff. But the way that he kept talking to her about like, oh, my father's not here, and that she's not making eye contact. So he's thinking that she's just so in her own headspace that she doesn't realize she's not talking to his dad. But then she makes direct eye contact and still keeps talking to him like he is her psychiatrist. And he at that point just goes into psychiatrist mode. And I just really like the acting there. I really like the way they set it up. And then she disappeared, it wasn't a surprise, but it still felt very organic to the story. And it did make me intrigued as like what happens next to that. That's why, like, even with a show as bad as The Watchful Eye, where it was that nanny who was hired by a
I remember you
strange
didn't like it.
attendant.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I did respect some of the scenes where it was like, this is how the mystery's unfolding. This is what we're trying to sell. And so I like that here too. I'm not saying it's worth a watch unless you're really into these type of series. But yeah, I'm not going to continue seeing it, but I don't hate it.
What exactly did you think? Because like a 6.5, what were the pros for it? Because I don't think I'm giving much away
Like
by
I
saying.
said, the books that I usually watch with Harlan Coben that
Yeah.
I've read are just, I usually nitpick the hell out of them because they're just not fitting his story, and also they don't make sense. Like
Mhm.
there's so many plot holes to me. This one felt, because it's supernatural, like there's less, like you get more leniency. You can make more plot holes.
He has less restrictions because this is just a show that I worked on instead of them like kind of focusing on the source material. I think it was smart for Amazon Prime to hire him because they've seen how successful he is for Netflix. But this series has gotten bad reviews. That's why I'm surprised to hear you give it a 6.5 out of 10.
6.5 is still not a great review. It's higher than I would have guessed I was going to give it, and I can forgive the show for its over-reliance on slow-mo backflashes, like in the first few minutes where they're explaining how the sister died, or the CW amount of times that every time you'd see a new character, you would then flip back to the past. Like
What were some more of the cons though?
the fact that Laz doesn't seem to have had any social life in the last 20 years, because when he comes back home, he's never getting calls from his other patients that he needs to be dealing with. He never gets calls from friends, or it's like his family and friends got all stuck in this time period in 1998, and he just hasn't moved on from there. And most importantly, the fact that the serial killer, who was introduced in 2 seconds at the beginning, is then shown at the very end, kind of just I don't know, not minding his own business, but like reading the same book that his dad did, the one that was on his desk. Like he has some connection to it, and it just felt that part like so forced.
Yeah, well, it feels like they were kind of building him up to be like season 3 Sherlock villain. At least that's what it reminds me of. I know that the show got a mixed review from The Independent. They gave it 3 out of 5 stars and said Lazarus is embarrassingly compelling, as strange and often silly as the storyline may be. It's plot as if it's been precisionally engineered to hook you in. I'm wondering at all, does like the 6.5 come into play where like I know that Suits LA was just like so bad it was kind of good? Is that
No, because
possibly
there were
some of it?
moments, and I'm not saying that this is at all as good as Haunting at Hill House, really in any way, but when he's speaking to Cassandra, or when he's speaking to the neighbor that moved into Cassandra's place after she died or whatever, like those scenes were, I was interested in the mystery at that point. All the other family drama, all the other stuff with like, I don't really care the fact that the person who was originally suspected as being Sutton's killer is now out and about, like stalking this dude. Like that stuff, I just haven't paid too much attention to it. However, if like episode 2 and 3 and 4 all start focusing on like these false leads, it felt like the pilot was set up to give you a compelling mystery, to give you who the victims, like several of them, and then also introduce just a lot of little red herrings. However, it's when shows decide to just overly concentrate on those red herrings that they get bad. And so that can only be determined in episode 2, 3, 4, what have you.
Again, it's only going to be 6 episodes, and it's a mini series, so they only set this up for a season, probably because of how busy Harlan Coben is. They did film in Manchester, which is where a lot of his series kind of take
I
place,
do
like in
remember they
Europe.
flipped out the American settings in his books. Like one was like Boston or Chicago or something, and then they would make it for the Netflix deal based in UK.
Because Harlan Coben has said that his books sell better internationally than in the US, so he thinks that it's a better, like, they're going to get more viewership if they actually do it in some place in Europe rather than in the original place that the books are set.
That makes sense. All right. Well, that'll be it for this episode. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.